What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, it's Scott DeLong with the CEO Podcast. We've got a really cool episode here today. But again, I'm with Vince Moiso, my partner in this endeavor. But we brought in a new friend of mine, actually someone I met back in June with an organization called Impact 11. Now, Impact 11 is a group of speakers who are working on and perfecting their craft. I'm new to it, so I'm learning a ton from these folks, but it's really a brilliant organization. And if you want to know more, hit me up. I'll talk all day about it. But our guest is Chris Schembra. Chris has written a couple books, best-selling books, actually, on Wall Street Journal's bestseller list, if I remember right.
Number one on the Wall Street Journal bestseller
Very
list.
cool. And the latest is
nice.
Gratitude Through Hard Times, and he's had plenty of them. In fact, even more recently, we were supposed to do this episode a couple weeks ago, and Chris got in an accident and couldn't do it. So more hard times for you. So, Chris, we're really excited to have you. And if you could take a moment to talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll just get rolling from there.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you to you and Vince for having me on this podcast. You know, as I think back to my Impact 11 times in June, you know, there's really a handful of people who leaned in and stood out, and I got to connect with in a meaningful way, and are doing great things together. And you're one of them. And so I'm glad to have made this work. And it's been a wonderful journey getting to know you in the last 2 months. I can't wait to make it 10 years, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever it's going to be. So nice to meet all of you on this podcast. My name is Chris Schembra. I live in New York City. I grew up in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I am a college dropout. I went off to rehab a number of times, multiple stints in rehab, jail, multiple episodes of non-suicidal self-injury, all those kind of things. So I'm kind of one of those non-linear, multifaceted dudes who's done a lot of weird and crazy stuff. But to tell the story that paints a picture for your listeners of what I'm super passionate about, I got to tell a little 3-minute story. And this story goes back to July of 2015. If you looked at my life in 2015, it didn't look too dissimilar from the lives of all of you listeners on this call. I had a good job. I had a nice family. I had good friends. Nice people in the industry said nice things about me. On paper, life looked pretty good. But one day I woke up and realized that just because a life looks good on paper doesn't mean it feels good in the heart.
Yeah.
That's so true.
And I realized that after coming back to New York City, after producing a Broadway play over in Rome, Italy. And when I was in Rome, I had a lot of these life awakening moments. I looked at the world different. You know, those Romans, they walk different, they talk different, they honor history different, they love life different. And when I got back home to New York City, I said, this ain't it. Lonely, unfulfilled, disconnected, insecure, having a crisis of my soul. And I needed to do something quick about it. So I really thought, what was it about Rome that changed my life? Well, it's how they ate their food with their friends amongst community. And I said, oh, that's it. I got to bring that home to New York City. And so in my kitchen, 350 square foot studio apartment in New York City, I invented a pasta sauce recipe. And a lot of you listeners are probably laughing when I say it, but the sauce was pretty good. And I decided I should feed it to people to see if it was really good or not. And that's when it all began. July 15th, 2015, I invited 15 of my friends that had never met each other over to my home to have a dinner party. 6:30 p.m. cocktails began. Then we started working together to create the meal. We had a shared group experience. We served some decent pasta sauce. And at 7:47 p.m. that night, I paused the conversation and I asked a very simple yet magical question. We'll get to that question in a little bit. But when I asked it and we went around talking about it and sharing stories with each other, everybody cried they loved my sauce. And I said, holy smokes, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to this. I kept doing those dinners. And then one day woke up and realized I was finding a little bit of joy. This was starting to have an impact on me. Community, connection, gratitude, empathy, being in service of others, providing a safe space for people to connect and gather. And then I realized, holy crap, I had it all wrong. I had been chasing all the wrong things in life. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's human connection. The great Johann Hari said that in a TED Talk, and I've decided to dedicate my life to it. And so what we created around the dinner table spread into us being able to help the world's biggest companies create spaces for meaningful moments of human connection, whether it's in a 30,000 person Zoom call or webinar or a 30-person board retreat. Groups of any size, in-person, virtual, big company, small company, we dedicate our life now to creating safe spaces that facilitate meaningful moments of human connection, or giving big keynotes about the science and psychology of that human connection. And, that's our life and we love it.
Vince is chomping at the bit. He can't wait to jump in on this.
Yeah, I got all kinds
What's
of
your
things
reaction?
to talk about.
Tell me what you're thinking right now.
Well, first I got to call. So one, I read that story and it really resonated with me. I grew up in an Italian American family, so I love that a trip to Italy could inspire you in that way, because I'll share one quick anecdote with you. Is I was at many years ago, I was at a high school reunion, and this woman who I wasn't super close with in high school, but she's amazing. And I've since become much better friends with her. And, she said one thing to me. She said, you know what I remember most about you? And a lot of things came to mind really quickly to me. Like, yeah, like, was I an asshole? I'm just thinking like, God, was I an asshole in high school? Like what, no, you know what she said? She said, your family came to everything, and your family was so important, and the connection that you had with your family was incredible. And I remember like at that moment, it was so impactful to me because, as Italians, which you experienced, friends and family just are everything in your life. And so when you sit down to share that meal, it's why it's a 3-hour ordeal. It's not going to happen in 30 minutes. It's going to be 3 hours, and it's just nonstop back and forth. You can see how I use my hands too. We're completely animated and we're elevated and our voices are loud. I mean, I'm so audible. I'm the youngest of 5 to top it off. If I wanted to be heard, I had to speak, and I had to speak loud. And so, if you've ever come across an Italian experience like that, it's loud, but no one's yelling at each other. They're all happy to be there. They're having their conversations. There's a side conversation going. People are stealing food off your plate. It's an incredible experience. So when I read that, really resonated to me. The next thing I would say is let me be the judge of your sauce, if I could. Here's what I'd say: if you had any Italians sitting at the table and they said it was good sauce, then I believe you that it was really good sauce.
There's a few Italians that have eaten at our dinner table, and I can tell you, each one of them loved the sauce.
I love it.
We have people that would beg for the sauce, and we would never give it to them. My girlfriend used to run a run a fashion company for this actress named Sarah Jessica Parker. And we would give out jars of our sauce to everybody and their mother every Christmas, friends, families, neighbors, relatives, and coworkers. And so everybody at SJP Collection would get our sauce every year. And every year, SJ and her husband, Matthew Broderick, would be, devouring the sauce and craving the recipe. And every year we would say, no, nobody gets the recipe, but it's that good.
I love it.
All
That's
right,
awesome.
So let's translate this community into the workplace now too, because it's really interesting. Friends and family are a big deal. We all need more. We need more. But talk to me about how you transition this sense of community into the workplace, because Vince and I are big proponents of this as well. And I want to hear your story on taking this to larger companies, even small companies, doesn't matter, right? How do we take this community and build that?
Scott mentioned briefly, in your own book, what the other thing that really resonated to me when Chris is telling the story is one of the key components to achieving, I think, what he has achieved is vulnerability. And we've talked a lot about that. We also talk a lot about the fearless organization, right? And Chris, what I heard you say many times is creating a safe place for that type of emotional experience to happen. So I think those are critical. I wanted to mention that, Scott. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I want to hear Chris's story. I want to jump in there and we'll twist it up a little bit when, things that we do differently or similar and things we could be doing differently. So talk to our audience a little bit about bringing this sense of community into the workplace and the value that it does for the organization.
Yeah. That's a great question, Scott. Companies, we can go back to the Latin origination of the word company. The Latin root of the word company is companis. Com means together, panis means bread. Companies were invented to break bread together. Companies were invented to be a source of community. And somewhere along the way, we started valuing organized systems, linear thinking, go for gold, rather than human experiences, taking care of the people we serve, etc. And regardless of what's led us here, the statistics, the reality of our world is we have a crisis of disconnection and an epidemic of loneliness within the workplace. Folks, if you're listening to this, the odds are your organization is filled with internal and external stakeholders that are crumbling under the agitation of uncertain times. There's great uncertainty, overwhelm, anxiety, fear of what's to come in our future. And what's happening is dissolving the workplace. We, according to Gallup, 79% of the American according to Gallup's 2022 State of the Workforce report, 79% of the American workers report being actively disengaged at the job. 60% are emotionally detached. 19% are miserable. According to the Surgeon General of the United States, Vivek H. Murthy, 51% of the American workforce reports being lonely on a consistent basis. That's equivalent to the reduction of lifespan of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Employee disengagement costs over $550 billion per year in lost productivity. That's what we're up against. Yeah. Our employees are disconnected, disengaged, and freaking miserable. So what do we do about that? We don't, we don't throw new systems and strategies, at them. We don't necessarily talk to them about new job roles or new open positions or moving laterally across the organization. None of that kind of stuff. What we do is help them meaningfully connect with others. A highly connected employee represents a higher percentage of goal attainment, positive relationships, well-being, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. PwC found that for every dollar spent in employees' social well-being yields $2.30 back in productivity. So creating connection amongst your teams is good for business. See, I look at it from a 4-part view. First, you have to get connected to yourself so that then you can create connection amongst your team, so that then you can create connection amongst your company to your customers. And then you can actually create connection to the broader humanity that your products and services serve, right? How does your company fit into the global scale of the world?
Yeah.
And so we help companies think through those 4 different pillars of connection.
So I've got a line, a saying. It's not a line. And I believe it is that spending time making changes to your systems and procedures is a waste of time if you don't work with your people first.
Love that.
Waste of time and money. Sorry, it's a waste of time and money if you're not working with your people first.
Yeah, I mean merely managing minutes and drawing up plays does not do as well as building an actual cohesive team that connects, collaborates, and champions a shared vision. In every keynote we give and a lot of the experiences we produce, we tell the story of Doc Rivers leading the 2007 Boston Celtics, who finished the year 24-58, and turning them into the NBA champion Boston Celtics, going 66-16, by introducing the South African proverb of Ubuntu. He took a dismal, I don't know, can I tell the story? Quick little 4-minute story.
Yeah, it's a great story.
So for all the listeners, if you remember on Wednesday, April 18th, 2007, the closing final days of that NBA season, the Boston Celtics had just lost their final home game to the Detroit Pistons, going 24-58. It kind of sucks. And you had 19,580 people in TD Garden chanting "Fire Doc, Fire Doc, Fire Doc," like in unison with passionate, vehement energy. Fire Doc. They're talking about their head coach, Doc Rivers. Off with his head. Kill him. Kick him out of Boston. I mean, if you're listening to this call, have you ever had thousands of people in one room chanting for your untimely departure from the workplace? Can you imagine?
Crazy, right?
So instead of firing Doc Rivers that offseason, the Boston Celtics make a series of moves. They bring in Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to join Paul Pierce as the big 3 in Boston. And even that decision was fraught with uncertainty. All 3 players have had prior interpersonal conflict. Who knew if they'd work together as a team? So again, Doc Rivers knew his task was monumental. It went beyond managing minutes and drawing up plays. He had to figure out a way to unite individual superstars into a unified team. And at the preseason training camp that offseason in Rome, Italy, the place that changed my life, right? Rome, Italy. He introduced the concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a philosophy that embodies the idea of mutual understanding or caring for all. It loosely translates to "I am because we are," or caring for others. Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela use it as a rallying cry to unite South Africa in a post-apartheid world. If it could work for a country, couldn't it work for the 2007 Boston Celtics? See, to Doc, the proverb quite simply meant, I can't be all I can be unless you are all you can be. I can never be threatened by how good you are, because the better off you are, the better I will be. And he went to his rookie team players and said, you're going to be in charge of selling this to the team. They had to give up. They had to stand up in front of their new superstar teammates and give a presentation. Ton of passion, a little bit of humor, a lot of swag. By the end of the presentation at training camp, Kevin Garnett raises his hand in the back of the room and says, Ubuntu on 3, they were bought in.
Nice.
And the season starts rolling along. They overcome moments of adversity. They play together as a team. They do all these kind of things. They're expected to live the philosophy both on and off the court. And then one day, personal tragedy strikes. Doc Rivers' dad passes away. Doc gets the call at 10. He's on the plane by 12 to go home to Chicago to be with his family to attend the funeral. At the game that night, Kevin Garnett, his superstar, calls him at halftime. Hey, Doc. Hey, coach. When you're sad, I'm sad. The game comes down to the final 7.1 seconds. Paul Pierce inbounds the ball to Ray Allen. Ray Allen sinks a 3 at the buzzer from the corner. The Celtics win the game. If you watch, and all you listeners can do this, if you watch the post-game interviews that night, everybody's standing at center court chanting Doc Rivers, Ubuntu, team unity, I am because we are. Doc Rivers comes back. The team is more united than ever. They steamroll the league, go on to finish 66-16. Crowning achievement is June 17th, 2008. They drown out their longtime rivals, the LA Lakers, and once again become NBA champions for the first time in 3 decades. And they play team first, unselfish, Ubuntu basketball. And if you're a leader that's listening to this call, you're probably asking yourself, what the heck does that have anything to do with business? Well,
it has everything to do with business.
How so, Vincent? Tell me.
Yeah. So one of our favorite guests, at least one of my favorite guests, was we had the head football coach at the University of San Diego, and we wanted to drill down. He had 10 seasons at the University of San Diego, and over 11 seasons. He was an assistant prior to that, had 10 conference championships over 11 seasons. And that doesn't happen by accident. And one of the things that he mentioned to us,
not just by recruiting either.
No. But he one of the things that he mentioned is he got out of the way. He surrounded himself with talent and leadership in a team mentality, 100%. And when Scott and I talked to him, it was so great to relate that to business, because business is no different. The team is so integral to the success of a business. And when you take a concept like Ubuntu, which I love that story and I know that story, and I'm an NBA basketball fan, and it's a great concept that, if you really break it down to the essence of what you talk so much about, which is just connection. And they were connected at the highest level that you can be connected. And when you're working together in a connected team environment, then you're putting the success of the business in front of your own personal success. Therefore, you're driven by everything you do on a daily basis is to bring others up, to bring the others around you up. And that just breeds success. I think there's no chance of not being successful in that environment, in my opinion.
Yeah, great leaders that are listening to this call understand, like Doc Rivers, that the economic potential of any successful organization or team is not based on individual prowess. It's based on their ability to connect, collaborate, and champion a shared vision. And that's what Doc Rivers and the 2008 Boston Celtics did. And that's what any organization can do. Connect, collaborate, champion a shared vision. Connection comes from actually connecting your people together in a meaningful way. Collaboration comes from having your teams not just be isolated, siloed groups of individuals, but actually reach across skill sets and barriers and team definitions to collaborate with other folks. And then champion a shared vision, a mutual purpose, a broader impact you want to have on the world, all these kind of good things. And Gallup studies actually found that workers in a hybrid culture are actually less able to connect themselves to the mission, vision, values, purpose of an organization because they're working remote. And so if you can address that, the already existingly good profits that we're seeing over the last couple of years can be even that much better if you tap into that gap, the purpose gap.
Well, and more than that, right? So happy people are more productive. There's no question about that. But also like this whole great resignation thing, and that's still going on. I mean, turnover is just at ridiculous levels because people are not feeling connected. If we can get our people to feel connected, they're not looking. They're there. My wife sent a meme to me the other day, a reel on Instagram that was some gal that said, if you hear the toxic words coming out of a recruiter's mouth, we're like a family. She goes, run from it. And I totally disagreed with that. Now, I might not use the word family, but community is a better word, I think, for that. And I believe that in order to keep this organization strong, we need to build that community feeling. And while you were saying that Doc had the rookies sell the program, it required one of my principles, one of the principles that I think is important, humility, in order for him to allow that to happen. He could be the boss. He could be big and strong and just say, here's what we're doing and you guys are going to follow. But that doesn't play, right?
Yeah. It's an important thing for organizational leaders to understand is that culture doesn't have to be driven from the top. It can be a bottom up initiative.
Supported by the top.
Supported by the top, of course. You have to have the primary initiative driven. You have to have dollars and budget and time. You have to have permission to spend time. In the age where some of the biggest companies in the world, like Shopify, are literally canceling all meetings more than 3 people automatically on a team's calendar at the beginning of a quarter because meetings are inefficient and blah, 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 blah. In a time where companies like that are literally going into employees' calendars and canceling team meetings, then when you actually have a leader who says, okay, let's actually create an hour per month or an hour per quarter or whatever the cadence is for intentional connection, then that's like that's a whole different ball game. And so when you have a leader that leads with that kind of intention and actually goes to their rookies and say, you're as powerful on this team as the individual superstars that have been here for generations, you teach them, right? Learning comes from everywhere within the organization. You don't stop being a learner just because you be a manager. Once you become a manager, that's the time to learn the most. You listen and learn from the people on the front lines who directly impact the product, the frontline workers, the sales, the touch points. You're there to serve them, not the other way around. And so, when you talk about, making someone feel a sense of belonging so that they never want to leave, there's a couple of things that you can do as a leader that's listening to this. Number one is a weekly check-in with each of your direct reports. Yep. Gallup found, the average employee, 79% of the American workforce reports being actively disengaged, right, on a daily basis, on a consistent basis. They did a study of over 18,000 employees, and leaders and all kind of good stuff in America. And what they found is that when a leader had a direct check-in, a one-on-one check-in on a weekly basis with each of their direct reports, it brought that direct report's engagement level from 20% to 80%. And when they asked that direct report what was their most favorite part of the weekly check-in with their manager, it's that the manager made them feel appreciated and valued and recognized. We call that gratitude. The manager appreciated the work that they do. They saw them authentically. Studies show that workers who receive gratitude, appreciation from a manager on a consistent basis are 81% more likely to perform hard work.
And it's easy, Chris.
It's easy.
It's so easy to do.
So, but
so for the minute, let's talk about the leader. Let's talk about the leader really quick too, because as good as this is for the employee, it is just as good for me.
Of course,
to be in that conversation.
Yeah, gratitude feels good to give.
Oh my gosh!
You're a leader. If you're a leader listening to this, you probably don't give enough gratitude to those around you. Right? Gratitude is the acknowledgement that we've received something of benefit, something of value from others. You can give gratitude to the person who opened up the door for you 10 minutes ago. You can give gratitude to your third grade teacher who gave you your first violin. You can give gratitude to an employee. You can give gratitude to an expat boss, whatever. Right. So when we say gratitude, especially within a team environment where it feels good to give, feels good to receive, and feels good for other people to witness you doing it, you leaders, scientifically speaking, probably don't give enough gratitude to those you serve because you have too high of a perceived awkwardness that giving that gratitude will be hard or it will make you look weak or it will be awkward.
Just the opposite.
And you underestimate the feelings that the recipient will feel when you actually give it. And so that is called egocentric bias, right? We assume the other person knows how we feel about them, and there's a perceived awkwardness in giving it. And so we never attempt in the first place. And that's why we live in a really ungrateful society, a really ungrateful workplace culture. And so to be a leader that reverses that trend and actually gives authentic appreciation in the language the recipient likes to receive it, you are drastically having a positive impact on that other person's life. Now let's double click on what I just said with giving it in the language the recipient likes to receive it. I'll tell you a quick story. I wanted to show gratitude to one of my buddies one day. His name's Henry. And I said, oh my gosh, Henry's provided so many tremendous benefits to so many people in this world. And I just want to give him thanks. So I called up an artist, friend of mine, and my team helped me compile like 20 moments from Henry's life that were really important to him. And we sent them to the artist. And the artist went to work for 2 weeks, etching a bunch of different parts of Henry's life story into this coffee mug that then he glazed and put in a big wooden box and recorded a video telling Henry why he put different parts of Henry's life story on this mug. And we shipped it to Henry. Never heard back from Henry about the mug. Oh yeah, we text and DM every day. Oh yeah, he clicks like on everything on social media, but I never heard anything about the mug. So one day I picked up the phone and called Henry. Henry, did you ever get the mug? Yeah, Chris, I loved it. Henry, just curious, what language do you like to receive gratitude and appreciation in? He said, quality time and acts of service. Let me guess, you love giving gifts. And I said, holy crap, how could I be so wrong?
Well, you're referring to you're referring to the 5 love languages, by the way. So I want to call that out, and I love it. I'm acts of service, by the way. My wife is touch and words of affirmation. So when I learned that it's so incredible with your partner, your life partner, and when I learned that about my wife, it changed everything for us.
So, would you mind telling our listeners what those 5 love languages are?
Yeah. So, gift. You named one, which is gift giving. The other I mentioned, which is words of affirmation. Another one is touch. Mine is acts of service, and then the other one is quality time. So each of which are important to others. So I spent a lifetime thinking everybody was acts of service because I'm acts of service, right? So I did all these acts of service for people, and I used to get so resentful. I would get pissed because people, I wouldn't get a thanks. I wouldn't even get I wouldn't even get a recognition of the act of service. And I'm like, God, man, and I just I couldn't understand it until, reading that book. And it totally changed everything. You went, oh, okay, now I understand. So you said, you say, and it's on your site if anybody wants to check out chrisschembra.com. If you go in the about section, you can see what Chris believes. And the one thing that stood out for me is not all gratitude given is gratitude heard. And it's because of the story you just told. And we're talking about the different love languages. So I think it was just a very, very relevant, great story to understand that when you're working and leading an organization, you have to understand that everybody gives and receives communication and gratitude in a very different way. And we have to make sure that we're giving that gratitude in a way that people want it and it is very meaningful to them. Let me finish with this because we're hitting that hour where we could talk forever. And I love this topic and I appreciate so much, Chris, that you've spent time to share some anecdotes with our listeners that I think are highly impactful. One thing that I want to come back to is at the beginning, as you were telling your story about being in Italy and ultimately coming back and creating this wonderful pasta sauce that you then shared that first meal with your friends. You asked a question. And we didn't tell our listeners. So if they've gotten this far into the podcast, that question, which rang very powerful to me when I read it, if you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, who would that be? And I imagine you got some incredible answers.
Yeah. So many people, Vincent, so many people in life, we don't authentically live in the present. We're always dreaming up a better tomorrow. We're always thinking about what big goals and aspirations and dreams we have. We often measure the distance between where we are and where we want to go. That future-oriented lifestyle really creates a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty and overwhelm. Tomorrow's not promised. It may never come. But the one thing that we have complete control over is what's happened in our past and what's going on authentically in the present. And at that very first dinner on July 15, 2015, when we asked that question, if you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, or that you've never thought to thank, we saw people, Vincent, they took a deep breath, physiological response. They sat back in their chair. They even leaned in and took a nice sip of wine and said, "Holy guacamole, who have I never thought to thank?" And you see their eyes rolling around. And for the first time and probably forever in their life, they took a pause to authentically reflect and come into the present and pull forth an amazing story that they haven't shared in years. A life-altering, life-awakening moment that is just beyond the surface. Those stories, they were real. Some people had never thought to thank their mother. Some people had never thought to thank their dog. Some people had never thought to thank themselves. At the same time, some of those people had never thought to thank their ex-bad boss. Some of those people had never thought to thank the judge that denied them bail. Some of them had never thought to thank the person who called them a loser and fat when they were a kid. But in that moment, they could take a pause long enough to appreciate all the positive benefits that they had accrued from those certain autobiographical experiences. And then we created a safe space around the dinner table for them to lean in and tell an authentic story around that. And we got to know each other by the way they gave gratitude to other people that we'll never, ever, ever meet. And that connected us in the most meaningful ways. Everybody cried.
Yeah, no question.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It was.
Hey, guys, we're going to have to cut this off. I mean, I'm having fun. We could do this again. We could do this over and over and over and over and over. And Chris, I'll be seeing you in December, I'm sure. And we'll be sitting around the table, maybe having a pizza, maybe having some sauce.
I'm going to call up Josh and Ryan and Seth and Pete and Jordan and Connor and Sarah and Jenny and everybody, Ivy. And we're going to say, Scott and Chris want pasta.
There you go. That sounds good.
And and me are going to give the blessing before the meal.
All right, folks. So it's ChrisSchembra.com. Go get his book, Gratitude Through Hard Times. He's got another book out that's been out for quite a while, longer than that as well. So if you like the first one, I want you to read. If you like the one that I'm asking you to read now, I want you to read the other one as well. Chris, really appreciate your time. Vince, as always, has been thanks. Vince, has been a pleasure. I knew you were going to love this conversation too.
It's a great conversation. Deserves a part two without a doubt, because listen, Chris, I would just say, love the work that you're doing. Totally agree with so much of what you're putting out there. And I think every organization could use the level of gratitude that you're teaching and preaching. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here.
All right, everybody. As always, if you want to get in touch with us, it's scottandvince@gmail.com. Questions, concerns, future topics, any of that kind of stuff, just get in touch with us. We're glad to have it. Chris, thanks again. Vince, we'll see you later. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.